At the far end of the South American continent, where the land fractures into lonely fjords and endless winds sweep across an untamed horizon, Patagonia rises like a final frontier, shaped by storms and silence. Here, mountains glow in cold dawn light, and valleys echo with the whispers of ancient travelers who once followed ice and sky toward the unknown. This is a land carved by patience and wind, where small communities endure in the shadow of towering peaks and restless seas. Their stories linger in the open air, resilient, weathered, and bound to a landscape that never stops moving. Far across the southern plains of Chile and Argentina, where forests meet wide valleys under a sky shaped by shifting winds, the world of the Mapuche emerges from a land woven with memory and endurance. Their story begins in this expanse of rolling hills, deep rivers, and ancient woodlands that have carried the echo of their footsteps for countless generations. This homeland forms the ground on which their identity grew, held together by a bond with soil, stone, and horizon. In the earliest chapters of their history, the Mapuche moved through these landscapes with a rhythm guided by seasons and weather. Rivers carved routes through dense forests, and the distant silhouettes of mountains offered direction during long journeys. The land became a living archive, holding the stories of clans who learned to read the wind, follow the light, and shape their lives around the natural order. Their understanding of terrain and sky created a resilient foundation, allowing them to adapt to shifting climates and changing boundaries. As new powers arrived from across the ocean, the Mapuche faced a conflict that tested the strength of their connection to the land. Waves of pressure swept through valleys and plains, bringing upheaval to territory that had grounded their communities for centuries. Yet the vastness of their homeland became their greatest ally. Forests offered refuge. Rivers carried messages. Mountains shielded gatherings. Through these trials, they continued to defend the landscapes that had raised them. The climax of their story rises from this long struggle. Even as borders tightened and the world around them transformed, the Mapuche held firm to their heritage, carrying forward the wisdom of their ancestors. Their resilience lives in the wide stretches of Patagonia, in the forests that still whisper their ancient names, and in the enduring spirit that ties people to place with unbreakable strength. Far across the open plains of southern Patagonia, where cold winds sweep over grasslands that seem to stretch without end, the world of the Tehuelche rises from a landscape shaped by silence and sky. Their name lives in these wide horizons, carried through valleys, plateaus, and distant ridgelines that guided their movements for countless generations. This is the ground where their story began, formed by a bond with open space and the restless power of the wind. In the earliest chapters of Tehuelche history, families traveled across these plains, following the movement of animals and the rhythm of the seasons. The land offered long paths bordered by scattered shrubs, glimmering lakes, and ancient rock formations that held the memory of earlier travelers. Every journey became a lesson in survival. The ability to read cloud patterns, distant shapes, and shifting weather created a deep understanding of the environment. Their knowledge of these wide territories allowed them to move with confidence through areas that appeared empty but carried signs understood only by those who had lived there for generations. The arrival of new forces from distant continents brought a period of conflict that tested the endurance of Tehuelche communities. Pressures grew around their lands, altering routes that had remained unchanged for centuries. Yet the vastness of Patagonia became their shield. Open plains provided room to adapt. Harsh winds erased traces of movement. The natural distance between regions offered moments of refuge. Through every challenge, they continued to protect the knowledge passed down from ancestors who had survived earlier shifts in climate and landscape. The climax of their story rises from this long history of movement and resilience. The spirit of the Tehuelche lives in the solitude of Patagonia, in the quiet strength of its plains, and in the enduring memory of a people who shaped their identity through vast space, patient observation, and an unbreakable connection to the southern land. Far along the broken channels and mist-covered islands at the southern edge of the world, where the sea breathes in cold light and tides carve narrow passages between rugged shores, the story of the Yagan begins in a realm shaped by water and wind. Their world rose from a maze of channels, glaciers, and shifting skies, forming a landscape that demanded patience, observation, and quiet strength. In the earliest chapters of their history, Yagan families traveled through these waterways in small vessels shaped for the currents. The sea became their path, their source of knowledge, and their constant companion. Islands of rock and moss stood as markers across a region where storms gathered without warning, and distant mountains glowed with the pale colors of dawn. Every journey required an intimate understanding of tides, cloud lines, and the behavior of birds and marine life. Generations passed down the knowledge of hidden coves, sheltered inlets, and narrow channels that linked one island to the next. Their bond with the environment grew from daily encounters with the raw forces of the far south. The arrival of distant powers created a period of conflict that unsettled traditions shaped over centuries. New pressures spread through the archipelago, altering the balance between communities and the sea. Ancient routes shifted. Familiar shores changed. Yet the vast network of waterways that had guided them for generations continued to offer refuge. The resilience of the Yagan lived in their ability to adapt, to follow new paths across old seas, and to hold on to the memory of a landscape that had long sustained them. The climax of their story rises from this enduring relationship with the Southern Ocean. Their legacy remains in the silent channels, in the cool winds that sweep across empty islands, and in the resilient spirit of a people shaped by some of the most remote waters on Earth. Far through the labyrinth of fjords in southern Patagonia, where long channels twist between steep cliffs and dark forests cling to rain-soaked slopes, the world of the Kawesqar begins in a realm guided by tides and shifting light. Their story rises from these remote waterways, a landscape shaped by ancient glaciers and endless winds that carry the sound of waves against rock. This is where their identity formed, bound to a world that moves with the rhythm of the sea. In the earliest chapters of Kawesqar history, families traveled through narrow channels in hand-shaped vessels crafted for endurance. Waterways served as open roads across a territory filled with sheltered coves, quiet bays, and distant islands that appeared and disappeared through mist. The environment demanded awareness. Storms built swiftly along mountain walls. Tides carved new routes each season. Animals moved in patterns known only to those who watched the water closely. Knowledge passed through generations created a deep understanding of currents, coastal refuges, and the signs carried in wind and cloud. Their resilience grew from constant movement through a landscape that challenged and protected them in equal measure. As outside forces pressed southward, a period of conflict rose across territories the Kawesqar had navigated for countless generations. New pressures altered familiar routes, bringing instability to regions shaped by long tradition. Yet the complexity of their homeland offered strength. Narrow channels shielded gatherings. Hidden inlets provided safety. Dense coastal forests softened the impact of change. Through these trials, the Kawesqar continued to draw endurance from their bond with the southern waters. The climax of their story lives in this enduring connection to a world of fjords and shifting tides. Their legacy remains in the quiet passageways that wind between islands, in the breath of wind moving across untouched bays, and in the lasting memory of a people shaped by one of the most remote maritime landscapes on Earth. Far across the wide plains and distant ridges of Tierra del Fuego, where cold winds sweep across open horizons shaped by ancient ice, the world of the Selknam owner emerges from a landscape marked by solitude and endurance. Their story begins in this vast terrain of grasslands, peat bogs, and scattered woodlands that carried the quiet footsteps of generations. This land formed the foundation of their identity, held together by memory, movement, and the steady presence of the southern sky. In the earliest chapters of Selknam history, families traveled through the island interior following the rhythm of seasons and the migration of animals. The land guided them with subtle markers. Low hills revealed the direction of winds. The changing color of dawn hinted at weather to come. Rivers carved routes through regions where silence held the echoes of earlier journeys. Each movement added to a growing archive of knowledge that passed from one generation to the next. Their understanding of terrain created a deep resilience, allowing them to adapt to harsh climates and long stretches of isolation. The environment shaped their sense of belonging, binding them to a world that demanded awareness and patience. As distant powers expanded toward the southern archipelago, the Selknam faced a period of conflict that altered the balance of their homeland. Pressures rose across areas that had remained unchanged for centuries. New boundaries emerged around plains that had long supported their communities. Yet the openness of their territory offered strength. Wide distances created room to adjust. Remote valleys provided refuge. The vast scale of the island softened the impact of forces that moved across it. Through these trials, the Selknam carried forward the memory of their ancestors and the wisdom learned from the land. The climax of their story rises from this long endurance. Their legacy lives in the windswept plains of Tierra del Fuego, in the quiet strength of its ridges, and in the enduring spirit of a people shaped by one of the most remote and demanding landscapes in the far south. Far along the misty archipelago of Chilote, where rolling hills meet cold Pacific waters and island after island drifts beneath shifting clouds, the world of the Chilote people begins in a landscape shaped by tide, rain, and quiet endurance. Their story rises from these green shores, where forests lean toward the sea and wooden villages rest above channels that have carried travelers for centuries. This is a place where land and water blend into a single rhythm, forming the foundation of Chilote identity. In the earliest chapters of Chilote history, communities spread across the archipelago's scattered islands, navigating narrow passages and sheltered inlets that linked distant shores. Dense forests provided timber for sturdy homes. Soft fields rose above the coastline, holding traces of ancient settlements shaped by the cycles of sea and soil. The ocean became both road and resource. Knowledge of currents, safe anchorages, and shifting tides guided movement between islands. Generations learned to read the signs, carried in cloud lines, bird patterns, and the color of light on the water. The land demanded adaptability. Rain shaped daily routes. Wind altered gathering places. Yet each challenge deepened their understanding of the archipelago's character. As new powers expanded south along the coast, the Chilote faced a period of conflict that tested the balance they had built with their environment. Pressures touched the edges of their territories, introducing unfamiliar systems that reshaped long-standing traditions. Still, the archipelago offered protection. Remote islands maintained space for continuity. Forested hills softened the impact of change. Quiet waterways preserved the routes their ancestors had followed for centuries. The climax of their story rises from this enduring resilience. The legacy of the Chilote lives in the wooden villages that watch over calm bays, in the green hills that hold the memory of earlier generations, and in the steady spirit of a people shaped by the meeting point of land and ocean in one of Patagonia's most iconic archipelagos. Far across the sweeping grasslands of southern Argentina, where long plains roll beneath a sky filled with shifting winds and pale light, the story of the Criollos Patagónicos rises from a land shaped by endurance and horizon. Their world begins in this open expanse of steppe and rugged plateaus, a region where early settlers carved a life from vast distances and the steady rhythm of the southern seasons. This landscape, silent and immense, became the ground on which their identity took root. In the earliest chapters of their history, families moved through the Patagonian interior, following the patterns of grazing animals and the changing moods of the climate. The land offered subtle signs. The tilt of grass showed the direction of wind. The color of the sky revealed approaching storms. Rivers, though distant from one another, formed lifelines across territories defined by dryness and wide space. Through long journeys, they learned the behavior of the terrain and built a deep understanding of its challenges. The Criollos Patagónicos carried traditions shaped by those who came before them, blending the memory of ancestral practices with new experiences forged on the frontier. A period of conflict rose as pressures expanded across Patagonia, reshaping boundaries and altering routes traveled for generations. New forces introduced unfamiliar structures, tightening control over lands that had grown central to Criollo identity. Yet the strength of the environment itself offered refuge. The vast openness allowed room to adapt. Distant valleys provided quiet continuity. Harsh climates demanded resilience and rewarded those who understood how to move with the land rather than against it. Through every trial, the Criollos Patagónicos held fast to their heritage, guided by the stories carried through their families. The climax of their story rises from this long journey across open space. Their legacy remains in the sweeping plains, where wind shapes the contours of each day, in the quiet strength of isolated outposts, and in the enduring spirit of a people formed by the meeting of old traditions and a landscape defined by endless horizon. Far along the green valleys and wind-shaped coasts of southern Argentina, where rolling hills meet the cold Atlantic and river plains stretch beneath a sky washed in pale light, the story of the Wales' Patagónicos begins in a landscape that offered both promise and challenge. Their journey rose from distant shores, carried by a vision of preserving tradition in a new world, and this vast territory became the ground where their identity took new form. The land itself shaped their early steps, guiding them through open fields, shifting winds, and riverbanks that glowed beneath the southern sun. In the earliest chapters of their settlement, families spread across the low plains and river valleys of Chubut, learning to read the land with growing familiarity. The terrain demanded patience. Dry seasons tested early foundations. Sudden changes in weather reshaped daily plans. Yet fertile stretches along the rivers provided stability, allowing communities to rise from careful planning and cooperation. Knowledge of the environment deepened as generations observed the behavior of local plants, the movement of water, and the resilience required to thrive so far from their ancestral home. Over time, they established an enduring presence, shaped by a blend of memory, adaptation, and the steady rhythm of Patagonian seasons. A period of conflict emerged as shifting pressures moved across the region, reshaping boundaries and introducing new dynamics that affected the growing settlements. The challenges of isolation grew heavier. Harsh winds swept through open spaces. Scarcity tested the strength of early communities. Yet the landscape offered quiet forms of protection. Valleys held pockets of stability. Rivers preserved essential roots. Cooperation within the community sustained traditions that anchored identity in a distant land. The climax of their story rises from this mixture of resilience and adaptation.